I like this fight a lot, even though I think it's really fucking weird how Paz is in her underwear while piloting it. But whatever. Yeah.
I think they throw something in there. Like, for some reason, there's water in it, so she took off her clothes. Whatever.
If I die, and I am referred to extensively in a video game that features adult characters trying to grope a character they believe to be 16, please offset it with a non-canon sex mission between the two male leads, Che Guevara, in 1967. It's amazing how he predicted the future. Anyone who has been fortunate enough to make a career out of their creative endeavors will tell you they can't all be home runs. This is something anyone could understand in the abstract, at least. After all, you wouldn't expect to find someone who works at a mutual fund company cutting themselves because their municipal bond fund performed 3/100ths of a point below the industry leaders the last year. In practice, however, it's a different story. For many, the experience of failing, or even just delivering something that doesn't meet the standard of quality they delivered prior, could be a permanent setback. They may believe the circumstances that preceded their more celebrated works are now impossible to recreate, or that they're just completely out of good ideas. Perfectionists, auteurs, and those who believe themselves to be perfectionists and auteurs find it even more arresting. For such a person, it could be even worse to deliver something that their fans still like. They can end up hating their audience for failing to differentiate between the unimpeachably great and the forgettable. For Hideo Kojima and company, I cannot imagine how frustrating it all was, both making and seeing the response to Metal Gear Solid 4. Certainly, all kinds of directors, artists, writers, and musicians have been done in by less. But Guns of the Patriots seemed to do something incredible, besides introducing fan-favorite Drebin. It seemed to absorb a lot of the exhaustion and resentment that the team must have been feeling at that point. And just 2 years after 4, we got Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, the first entry in the Big Boss Goes to Hell trilogy. This trilogy would end up seeing the deepest gameplay, the most deliberate planning, and arguably the best writing the series would ever see. I realize that at least one of those assertions may be controversial, but I think more people would agree if they'd gotten a chance to play this fascinating first step. I think that may actually be the most tragic thing of all. That's such an ambitious game that set up so many things and even showed that Kojima himself could still grow as a writer was relegated to the PSP. The PSP was something that was given to America's stickiest kids as a sympathy gift when their dads went to jail for coupon fraud. If Konami were capable of Resident Evil remake-style recreations, this would be the entry most deserving of a second life. So I played this game before. There was like a 2-year window where you could play this on an Xbox One somehow during the initial release of the Metal Gear HD collection.
I did as well.
Yeah, and I don't know what you thought about it then. I found it very weird, and I was, quite aware of the technical limitations of the PSP at the time. But this was this was before Ground Zeroes, or at least before I had played Ground Zeroes, and obviously way before Phantom Pain. And now playing it again after. That first time, I didn't dislike Peace Walker. I just felt I just couldn't get the limitations of the PSP out of my mind. This time around, I was a bit more open-minded, and I don't know if it's just the fact that I played it so soon after 4, but I really felt so much more positively about it this time.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I felt sort of the opposite of what happened with 4. My second playthrough of 4, as I described last time, was less positive. With Peace Walker, knowing the limitations improved the experience the second time around. But I should say, I don't think if we've talked about it, I think I've edited them out in our previous episodes. I was one of the nitwits that decided to play this series in order of the story's chronology. So this was the second game I played in the series. I played Snake Eater first, and then I moved right along to Peace Walker. At the time, I just felt like, okay, this is like a strange little like baby version of Snake Eater. You know, a lot of the environments are similar. The controls are different, but it felt like a little DLC or something. And I didn't hate it, but I was excited to move along to what I thought were the more, like the proper sequels. But playing it again this time, I have to give a lot of credit. There was almost a point where I was thinking it's like deceptively one of the better games in the series. But then I did run into some issues that I'm sure we'll get to that we mentioned last episode about balance, the limitations of the PSP, but also the limitations of it as a single player campaign due to the co-op build of some of it. And that does make it a little clunky. But on the whole, it's a pretty good Metal Gear story, some very good Metal Gear sections. And overall, I think it's better than it has any right to be as a game for the PSP.
Oh, yeah. I think it's... I don't think there's a lot of debate when people say this is the best game that ever came out, like, for PSP.
Nuclear deterrence by means of mutually assured destruction. It was an era of transient peace backed by massive military budgets. Both the United States and the Soviet Union plunged into economic turmoil, ushering in an era desperate for a new world order. In the wake of the Cuban Missile Crisis, Latin America became a pivotal key to maintaining the power balance between East and West. Yet in the midst of this struggle, one government remained without a military. In 1974, as if taking advantage of the nation's lack of deterrence, an unknown power initiated weapons deployment in the region. Their identity and true motives remain unknown. Now, to preserve peace in Costa Rica, a nation without a military, the people must turn to an army without a government. Those who would give rise to outer heaven.
This game is sort of all over the place with balancing, partly because they were consciously making this for a younger audience. I mean, I'm joking about who owned PSPs, but I'm kind of not. That was sort of it was like white 10-year-olds who had fades.
that demographic that we all had.
Okay, have you ever seen like a kid where you're like, you're way too young to be wearing a tank top?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's say that.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's who the PSP was for.
Yeah.
And I think that makes the subsequent release incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't think it affected the plot all that much. I mean, there are little things here and there that are, I think, they wouldn't have gone in this direction if not for being on the PSP. But gameplay-wise, it is absolutely Metal Gear for a younger audience because the stealth sections they're incredibly easy. Equating it to like sort of a scaled down slightly version of Snake Eater, I think is a good analogy. There aren't a lot of angles or time. There's not a lot of timing that you really have to memorize all that tightly. Yeah. It's very easy to just dispatch everyone.
Yeah.
You're never fighting against like a person in a boss fight. That's the other weird thing about it. And I think that was probably a good call, just knowing what the limitations of the PSP were. I think it would probably be more frustrating to, at least in the original iteration of this game, to try to have a fight like, the boss in this game. And I don't know who would even fill that role. I mean, like, Coldman is like 62, but you would just be beating the shit out of an old man, which I guess could be fun to some people. But especially towards the end of the game, when it gets really grindy, and you start not just with the something they would do a lot of in Phantom Pain, with like, you know, buffed versions of either the quasi Metal Gears you're fighting or like the vehicle fights.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up doing like all of these, and it's kind of my least favorite type of challenge in a game, which is when they just take a normal enemy and they like multiply their health by a factor of like 10 or 20 and just make them an insane bullet sponge.
Yeah. I mean, talking about the scaled down nature of the challenges, and let's leave aside the boss fights for a second, because that's like a unique aspect of the game where it swings into being not necessarily difficult, but tedious in how spongy the bosses are. That kept happening. I liked some better than others, but there's stuff about this that I really, really like. I love the cutscenes. I think the story is pretty good. It's better a story than 4. And I like the characters that they introduce. As you say, this is really the first of a trilogy, even though it's not a numbered main title, technically. Kojima, I think when he announced it, called it MGS5, or said like MGS5 was in his heart or something, and he wanted to make it, and that was this.
Oh, yeah, it was, at least the working title for it was Metal Gear Solid 5 Peace Walker, and they ended up walking that back because they thought it was kind of unfair to put a numbered entry on the system that so few people had.
Yeah.
That, it all makes it that much stranger to me. I mean, I have to figure that they were given some type of like incentive or something to make something that was exclusive for the PSP.
Mm-hmm.
But this is such a deliberately made trilogy. There's so much setup in these first 2 games, this and Ground Zeroes, that is, paid off years down the line in this way that you don't quite see as much of with the first 3 or 4 games. That it is somewhat weird to me that they ended up like, I don't know. I mean, I guess they didn't want to make 4 games, and I guess this is just sort of the nature of making anything. They probably didn't fully imagine they were making this trilogy when they agreed to make this second PSP title while they were making portable ops.
Because I skimmed the development of this one. It's not as dramatic as the stories of development we've discussed in the past. It was basically like Kojima thought, okay, I'm up for oversee. It's always, I'm going to oversee the next one. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to direct it. I'm just going to oversee it. And then next thing you know, he's like, I've got this. And that's what happened with Peace Walker, essentially, because it was announced the year after MGS4. It really wasn't a ton of time in between the titles. And I think he fell in love with the character of Big Boss at that point. Appropriately had felt he ended Solid Snake's story. He said, we're gonna start this new trilogy, or some new story. In a I think one of the series' better sort of retroactive character creations of Kazuhiro Miller, who was in Metal Gear 2 in 1990, and then kind of in Metal Gear Solid 1. He now sort of re-engineers this guy to have been Big Boss's consigliere. And then we get Otacon's father, who I think is one of the more interesting characters in the series. So yeah, Kojima was not skimping on the story element at all, and I think that's what allowed it to be the prequel to MGS5, both Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain. Whether he knew all that was going to happen after this, I don't know. Probably not quite.
A lot of Kojima's exhaustion was, and I think this kind of accounts for maybe why he really did hate her kind of dirty ultimately. I think that he may have realized that he was sick of the character of Solid Snake.
Yeah.
Which, Solid Snake is a great character, but I don't think there's a ton you could have done with him.
Yeah.
After 2, at least. And with Big Boss, especially at this point in the series when the games were so much less about story and more about themes, it seemed so much more open-ended, even if you could end his story with 3 and it would be perfect. The most interesting thing about like the story and the interplay of the characters in these games to me is how much better and how much more natural the writing seems compared to especially 4. 4 is just a game filled with people monologuing at each other, which I don't mind.
Yeah.
Like I could even see that as like a stylistic thing.
Sure.
At times, even if it does get very fucking old at 4, this game where there's supposed to be all this urgency and people are like, okay, sit down. Do you have 3 hours?
Well, it's like I said
I have
on
a
those
speech for you.
Those Nomad cutscenes feel like there's a carbon monoxide leak in the fucking Nomad half the time, where everyone's just taking their time. I think the thing that I realized is those monologues and the dialogue like that works better in a codec call, because there's this sort of artifice to it where you realize, this is a dialogue machine that you're trapped in, and you just kind of, you can flick forward, people respond pretty quickly to each other. When you have to turn all that stuff into like a rendered cutscene where people move around the room and there's blocking and stuff, it doesn't go down so well, which was a major improvement in Peace Walker right away. I thought the cutscenes were always fun and always kind of snappy and interesting, and they were dealing with with 2D Ashley Wood illustrations, which just goes to show you really don't need to get caught up in the 2008 Michael Bay shaky cam stuff we were deriding last time to tell a good story.
There's much better and much more efficient characterization.
Yeah.
And I always thought this was a weird, a sort of weird paradox of these games at times, that the certain characters were, it's sort of canonical that they're incredibly charismatic and people place all their hopes and dreams into them and just follow them to the ends of the earth. Mm-hmm. Some characters, they just you could see that in them. With the boss, I think that's immediately apparent.
Yeah.
But with Big Boss, at least as we knew him before these games, it was kind of hard to fill that gap from what we saw of him in Snake Eater to the guy we saw at the end of 4. Even though you don't, like we said, we don't need answers for everything.
Yeah.
But with this, you really see what people saw in him and how he got all these followers, all these people to follow him to the ends of the earth. And they do so much with his relationship to Kaz, and I'm really glad they took a second crack at this, because in Portable Ops, and Portable Ops it's controversial whether it is canonical or not, and it's a weird game because it's Big Boss allying with Roy Campbell, and I kind of hate that, because it's like Campbell just never really talks about this time in his life.
Yeah, that
when he was in this crazy hostage situation with Big Boss, the Patriots.
The canonicity of that game is basically based around what Kojima said in an impromptu answer, in a couple interviews, where he kind of says, well, I mean, I oversaw it, so I think some of that stuff happened, but I didn't really have anything to do with it, so I don't think about it as canon. And that just gets translated into whatever wiki tries to enforce all of these Metal Gear dogmas. But I do find it funny in this game. Kaz says something like, "We can leave all that crap from San Geronimo behind." Yeah. I mean, you could view that as an in-universe remark about moving up in the world of mercenaries, or you can view it as something a little bit more of a wink at the audience.
Yeah. Well, I really like that they retconned a different character here and totally retconned his origin story, just his entire life. But they didn't do it just to go, hey, you remember this guy? Which that kind of feels like what they're doing with Campbell in Portable Ops. With this, they actually kind of establish why these guys were so close, and they actually kind of articulate their relationship in this way that isn't new to the series. There are certainly great character relationships throughout the entire Solid series, but they do it much more naturally here in this way that I really like a lot.
I think Kaz is one of the better retrofitted characters of the series, because if you haven't played the MSX games, go play Metal Gear 2 at least. He's in that. He's just kind of a generic, commander who can help you out. Then in MGS1, he gets, you get a voice actor, you get more texture on his character, but he seems like he's just sort of over the hill, maybe even washed up, former operator who just he's relegated to just giving advice nowadays. And then, of course, we discover he's been dead the entire mission, which is kind of sad. Like, he's just rotting in some room the entire game. And so to know that's where he ends up, you kind of can appreciate how much Kojima and the writers wanted to pour into this tragedy that is his character. Because in this game, he's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. He's very Val Kilmer from Top Gun. And then in the next few games, he takes a real turn, and he becomes the most pissed off guy in the series, possibly. And then knowing that he kind of never recovers from these events and ends up just advising Solid Snake at the Zanzibar land thing, and then killed off screen in, probably some crappy apartment that he's scraping by in, by the time of MGS1. That's a pretty interesting way to go backwards with a character and bringing them to life.
Yeah. And the stuff they do with him in subsequent games after this too, I really love it, especially because, as you said, incredibly bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and we've seen them do that before. We talked about how much we love that with all the founding patriots, beginning as these idealistic and youthful, enthusiastic people, and ending as these sort of beaten down deep state husks. With Miller, what I love so much, and I think this only worked because he was such a secondary character. Initially, when you in Phantom Pain, when he's completely transformed by anger and vengeance, he's furious at the world, and he never really recovers from it. The thing that makes it more tragic and ultimately, again, more naturalistic is it's not like it's not like Donald Anderson to Sigint, where you have to say it explicitly because no one would really connect. There's no similarity there. Right. You still see a ton of flashes of the Kaz we see in this game. Mm-hmm. Some of the silliness or
his burgers,
his sort of modes of speech and his syntax. And that's way sadder. Just, you can write any character and make them as fun and silly and make them your awesome protagonist best friend, and then go, okay, now he's fucking Darth Vader, and everyone will go, oh, that's so sad. But actually, making it like a real person who is going down this spiral that they'll never recover from, where the person's still there.
You can recognize him, in his darker chapter, And I just like that because, Big Boss, he goes from being the rookie to then being the supervillain, who set the whole world's events in motion. Zero, he goes from being a commanding officer to being the guy who controlled the shadow state of the Patriots. Kaz is the opposite. Sometimes people fall off. Sometimes a guy who was super cool in the 70s, they decay and they shrink in importance. And I like that they finally took a character and went the opposite way with, reverse engineering them into some kind of global, one-man army. Kaz goes the other way. He ends up being a sad guy living alone who's murdered quietly off screen after, if you, like me, played these games foolishly in the chronological order, you've spent a lot of time with him thinking of him as, almost as powerful and driven and unstoppable a commander as Big Boss himself. So I really I think that's neat. And then Huey, I think they did a great job, even more subtly, I think. In this one, there's something off about him. He's definitely, Otacon worked on weapons, of course, as well. But Huey, especially if you get into his briefing tapes, there's something weird about him. There's something lizard-like about him, whereas his son is so much more emotive and humane. And in the next game, they really, or I suppose if you count Ground Zeroes in 2 games from now, they really let that rip. And I think that was, again, instead of just making him Otacon Mark I, they really went somewhere interesting where they they sort of subverted your idea of what Christopher Randolph was going to play as the father of the original character.
They do such a good job with Huey's character. The thing that I love too, and this is, it's sort of a new look for, I don't know if he's so much of a villain. He's a little, I guess he does end up causing a ton of horrible shit to happen. So kind of a villain, even if he's a little too pathetic.
I kind of like him
moniker.
as a pathetic monster, though. That's what.
He's a great pathetic monster because it's a new look. Instead of being, like a Solidus or an Ocelot in 1 and 2 type, he's so obsequious and passive.
Yeah.
And initially you just think, Otacon, Mark 1. But eventually once you kind of see the pattern there and slowly start uncovering his hand in all types of shit, you really become disgusted with him.
Yep.
And what's more is they wrote a character who is so fucking annoying, deliberately, so fucking annoying and detestable in this way that, like, I think it takes a lot of chops. It takes a lot of subtlety to write someone who's that evocatively hateable.
I think it also takes chops of the voice actor as well. I think Christopher Randolph does a great job because unlike Hader, he doesn't change his intonation of the lines the way that Big Boss is a lot more gravelly. He's almost more like Old Snake than he is Solid Snake. Randolph gives everything. He's in the same timbre as he was with Hal, but it's in combination with the writing. Everything that was Hal's strength in making you endeared to him, Huey just creeps you out. And I think that's very good work by Randolph. I think Randolph's one of my favorite voice actors in this series.
Randolph's sort of an unsung hero of the cast.
He really is. He really is.
He really makes the themes of this, well, he's like barely in Ground Zeroes, but he's still like a pretty vital character. He makes the themes of this trilogy kind of sing in a way, because there's a type of sleaze and calculation and just an underhandedness to his character that you couldn't quite imagine in most of the other games in the series. And I am very curious about like the writing process with this game especially, but really all the games in this trilogy, because it's so strange to me. This is the guy who wrote Naomi in the last game we fucking played. And people are just, they're so, I'm not going to say it's realistic because that's kind of a meaningless descriptor for these games, but it's just so much more natural feeling.
Yeah,
and
I
just
agree
so
with you.
much, the interplay between characters, the relationship between Kaz and Big Boss, and just all of it is so, it doesn't, with Naomi, all of her character stuff in 4 and most of the character stuff in 4 for that matter, you feel like a duck who's going to be turned into foie gras. They're just shoveling shit down your mouth. And with this, you're just sort of enjoying the story, enjoying the fun setting.
Yep.
And then, your ears perk up and you go, that was kind of fucking weird of him to say.
Yeah.
And then you realize it sets this thing up way down the line, but they're not beating you over the head with it.
But there's one where Huey's like, the thing is, you can call it a Cold War, but the nuclear deterrence means that no one's dying. I mean, there's some proxy wars and stuff on the periphery, and it's like millions of people died in the Cold War. Millions. And I thought for a second, like, the writers maybe just, they didn't think about that. But then Huey says, I mean, I know there's wars going on in, those places, but he really doesn't give a shit. There's something just not quite right with him.
Yeah. And there's something so fundamentally not just like myopic and self-serving, because there are a lot of characters like that in these games, even characters that aren't expressly terrible, but I think about like the way that he talks about his personal relationship with nuclear weapons, how it's sort of framed all around how it made him feel.
Yeah.
Like a Japanese kid goes to his school and shows him pictures of like his family's home like destroyed in Hiroshima, and Huey's like, could you imagine how I felt?
Yep.
There's just a fundamental selfishness and small-minded shittiness with Huey that is so it's not screaming at you in every scene, but it's just so consistent that by the end of your time with him, you want to rip his fucking head off.
It's really more the imbalance of the gameplay that I have criticism for with this game.
Yeah, and I just a note about Kojima's history making handheld games, especially. I think we referred to it a bit in another episode, but Boktai, The Sun is in Your Hands. That the solar gun that you get in Metal Gear Solid 4, that's actually the same thing that you have in Boktai, which is it was a vampire hunting game for the Game Boy Advance, and I had this game when I was a kid. This was a really cool game. It had a like tiny little solar panel like you would have on a calculator. And so you had to go outside and literally get sunlight to charge your solar gun. And you could try to cheat the system and use fluorescent lights. It wouldn't work. You had to, actually get sunlight.
That's great.
Because Kojima was worried about kids being inside all day playing on their Game Boys. Boktai was a really great game, but that does show that his relationship with handheld games he kind of is into the gimmicky nature of handhelds a bit. Yeah. With this one, it's a huge detriment because not the main game, but a lot of the grindy extra boss fight stuff that you have to do if you really want to be a completionist and unlock tons of things. All these are made for a type of co-op that necessitates not you being on the internet, but you have to be right next to another person who has a PSP and has Peace Walker.
Yeah.
And I could definitely see how it could be fun. There's a bunch of weapons and tools that only work for co-op, and it sounds like people really loved doing that when that was a possibility. But of course now I don't think it's quite as bad as single player games that need to be always online. There was a little foresight missing, like these very grindy bullet sponge bosses. I ended up being able to take them on, and I ended up like unlocking the Patriot and all that other shit, but it wasn't really all that fun.
Yeah.
And
there's like a weird, it's not at certain points there's a big rush from conquering it, but it's not necessarily the same thing as having a good time.
Exactly. Yeah.
The helicopter behind A is famously annoying, especially earlier on in the game when you don't have as many toys to exploit. That's how you get the sneaking suit.
Yeah. I was able to get the bandana and the Fulton launcher, which if you rank up your smoke grenades and have a bandana, you can S-rank any of those vehicle missions.
Yeah.
I mean, you need other stuff. I mean, this is why it's so grindy. You also need the fucking anti-tank rifle, the semi-automatic version, so you could crack the cockpit. This is all to say that there are certain things you can only unlock where you not only have to beat these incredibly difficult vehicle missions, and you have to fight it's like a custom version of the most advanced helicopters, so it's super spongy. You can't kill anyone, so you either have to get rid of all the soldiers, and there in these custom versions of the missions, there are like 36 soldiers sometimes.
Yeah.
And the only way you can really do that is like through the Fulton launcher or by, using the anti-tank rifle to crack open the cockpit. And to even like get those items that make this possible, you have to do a lot of grinding and, S rank slightly lesser versions of missions like that. And again, like I did all of this because I felt like it was kind of I felt necessary to give a full evaluation of this game, and B, I just really enjoyed the setting and the world that they were going for with Peace Walker. But I don't know. I wish they had planned for something that people that would allow this game to be a little more playable years down the road.
Yeah, which is a lot to expect in that era, obviously, and on this platform. But I do agree. I mean, we've said that if you were going to remake a game, remake this one or punch it up or something, because there's a lot of good here that deserves to be enhanced and expanded, unlike Snake Eater, which doesn't need any of that. But I will say, in talking about, the different systems of this game, it moved the series, maybe not Ground Zeroes, but obviously Phantom Pain. It moved the series into a new sense of what the flow of the games would be, which is individual missions that you take breaks from and go back to a base and build. That's the base building system, obviously, is introduced here. And I think they really succeeded in that. It really does get you hooked. Like, you want to recruit more guys, you want to do R&D, you want to expand stuff. More or less, I think it was kind of a stroke of genius to introduce this new idea because it matches up with Big Boss and his style versus Solid Snake, who's a one-man, hired killer. Big Boss is about being a commander.
Yeah.
And winning people to your side and spreading the room. I thought that was very good, both thematically and gameplay-wise.
Yeah, I really enjoyed like building out MSF in this game, and I also love that about Phantom Pain. One of the reasons that I would like to see this game remade is because I would like to see these missions being much more populated and to see these levels redone. Because I think that this game has a ton of replay value, but it's hampered a bit by how easy a lot of the conventional missions are, the conventional sneaking missions.
Yeah.
But I think the whole concept of having a base and developing all your weapons, I think it's a pretty elegant solution to the problem of no longer piecing weapon and item discovery with your progression through a sort of more linear world. I think it's way better than what they tried to do with 4, which is you have to for the most part buy all your weapons from the worst guy in the world. This is it can get grindy, people who play this game, or especially Phantom Pain, will tell you how annoying it can be sometimes to you have to find the guy who's good at like making this specific type of SMG or something. Right. But for the most part, I think it's a pretty good way of measuring out player power, and it rewards people who get really into the system usually without making you so powerful that it makes the game pointless.
Which I think would bring us to the final sort of innovation. I mean, there's little innovations, like part of the base building stuff is you send your guys on missions. They obviously carry that over into Phantom Pain. I think that's all neat too. I don't think I played this as much as you did. Like, I didn't build Zeke this time. I just didn't have time in my life to do it. But that was the next thing I was going to say, is like building Zeke. I think that's neat. I sort of wish actually that they had carried that over to Phantom Pain. Yeah. Of course, there's a separate Metal Gear in that game, but I thought it could have been built up as much as any of these other features are, with more time and resources. But it's a cute thing in this game that actually ends up factoring into the true completion of the plot.
Yeah, let's get into the story. All right, so this game takes place in 1974. It's been over 10 years since Operation Snake Eater. The first thing we see and the first thing we do in this game is, I guess you would call it a shirtless tutorial.
There we go again.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very vital thing to this game. Big Boss is on this rainy beach. He's surrounded by all these guys in, military fatigues and balaclavas. Snake, very curiously, he has Big Boss's same snake scar on his chest. You can skip this tutorial version, or at least I could in emulation. It's sort of annoying because it was made for PSP. And in fact, a lot of the design issues with this game have to do with the oddity of the PSP not having a right analog stick with which you could control the camera. They tried this thing, at least on the PSP, where you would control the camera by way of the face buttons, which mostly worked, but people said was kind of an inelegant, but their only solution. Thankfully, if you're playing this in RPCS3, you could just skip all of this. But
or the HD collection, which is where I played it. The HD collection. I don't know if it's actually part of the HD collection on the PlayStation Store or the Xbox Store anymore.
I don't think it is.
But it is part of the disc. Yeah, very strange. You're right when you said earlier that I originally played it on an Xbox One.
I did too, yeah.
But it's like not attached to the HD collection. It's this weird separate thing. It's just I had to search MGS PW. That's how I found it. It was really bizarre. But I have the disc of the Legacy Collection, which is just because I wanted a hard copy of it. And it plays like Subsistence. You can use the right stick to control the camera.
Yeah,
so
that's yeah. I had the same thing. I mean, that's why I emulated it, just because I just figured there's no way to get this on the HD collection that's on like either the Xbox or PlayStation Store anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Just being able to like play this on normal controls, I think it's part of kind of what makes some of the levels easy, that you can actually control the camera normally. But anyhow, this game does have an over-the-shoulder camera setup similar to 4. I would say this game controls a bit closer to the first 3 games than it does to the subsequent games. But there's also some weird limitations, of course, owing to the PSP's limitation. You can go prone, but you can't do anything while you're prone. You can't shoot, you can't crawl.
Yep.
You can lean against a wall, but you can't move, you can't peek out. You just stay. You hold R1 to just.
You can knock, I think.
You can knock,
still do that. Yeah.
But there are improvements to the controls. They start migrating a lot of shooting and aiming to the shoulder buttons.
Yep.
They would eventually end up like doing this with triggers like everyone else was doing. Just being on PSP meant there were some kinks to work out. Yep. But overall, I think it controls as good as it was capable of doing on such a system. But anyway, this is, for the time being, this is MSF. It's a bunch of guys on a beach, and you can tell their boss is their boss because he gets to not wear a shirt.
And this is a weird thing in this game where for most of the game, Snake, who had been christened Big Boss by Lyndon Johnson in Snake Eater, in a title that makes total sense. You killed the boss, so now you're bigger than the boss, so you're Big Boss. He doesn't want to adopt that title yet. And throughout the game, he tells everyone, call me Snake. And by the end of the game, he accepts the title. But someone says, sorry, because they call him Big Boss. And then he goes, call me Snake. And then they go, oh, sorry, Vic Boss. And you're like, what? Well, what is this? What is this one now? Which I guess is short for Victory Boss. But he just said, call me Snake. And the guy invents a new way to call him boss. But the key thing is that, they all worship you.
Yeah.
Since Snake Eater, he has become a legend who has begun to globetrot. And as we learned in MGS4, he has since split with Zero, who wanted to start the Patriots, but Big Boss thought it was a perversion of the boss's will rather than a fulfillment of it. So Zero's out there somewhere. We don't know exactly what's going on there, but we know that we have opted for the more anarchic military lifestyle of soldiers first, creating a world, maybe even an actual nation or slice of the globe just for soldiers, which seems noble right now, but by the MSX games will have mutated into a pretty horrible end logic for this character.
Yeah, well, when we get to the final 2 games in the series, we'll probably have an extended discussion about Big Boss's where he falls morally by the end of this. These games really set him up to by the end of this trilogy, it really is clear that he is a complete fucking bastard. Though, how much of a bastard, what kind of one, is sort of dependent on how much you think from the MSX games is silently retconned and how much isn't.
Sure.
Which I think it's kind of amorphous. But at least for what we see now, something that I really like that they do with Big Boss's characterization, that is, it's immediately evident. They do kind of mature him in a way. Like, he does seem changed by his experiences. Like, he's still like a dumbass in a lot of scenes, especially in a lot of tape conversations. Some of which are like some of the funniest writing they've ever done. But he's like kind of a smartass. He tells more jokes now. He's a little wearier. Mm-hmm. But another thing that we'll see throughout this game, and that we alluded to in previous episodes, that is it's a huge divergent point between him and Solid Snake. This is the game where we start seeing him to sort of like believe in his own legend a little bit, and they do it in very subtle ways. But for now, he's just helping these men who have to wear clothes work out with his life partner, Kazuhiro Miller. And it was a big deal with this game that they ethnically retconned Kaz. He used to be Benedict Hellmaster Miller.
We haven't even discussed this, just like it's the reverse of what they did with Snake. Because Snake was originally, in the old story Bible or whatever, was supposed to be Japanese.
Yeah.
Right? And then they kind of dissolved all that.
He's sort of Japanese because Dr. Clark's assistant was Japanese.
Yes. With Kaz, he was originally just this blonde-haired, American, hyper-American looking guy. Again, I think probably based on Val Kilmer. It seems that's certainly what he looks like from Top Gun. But now they introduce the idea that he's is he biracial, or is he just straight up Japanese?
He's biracial. He has a Japanese mother, and his father was an American GI. I do get the sense that Kojima is very interested framing something as having like American parentage and to some extent like a Japanese motherhood.
Right.
I don't know quite what he's saying to. I always wonder if he's equating these characters or the circumstances of birth with like, modern Western aligned culture or what he's trying to say, but he's going for something there. He keeps doing that. Anyhow, the new Kaz Miller is there, and he is, we have company. Put some clothes on.
Yeah, we have visitors in the form of a distinguished professor introducing himself as Professor Ramon Galvez and his student Paz, who are coming from Costa Rica because they are suspicious of, ultimately they say, the CIA or some kind of CIA paramilitary force putting down roots in Costa Rica. Costa Rica, they call it a peace constitution. Costa Rica doesn't have a military, and so it has no way of challenging or uprooting this armed force. And so they're coming to MSF
Militaire Sans Frontières. It's a takeoff of Médecins Sans Frontières.
of Doctors Without Borders. Yeah, they have to say in the beginning, this is no way affiliated with Doctors Without Borders. Probably good to just get that out of the way, sure. And so they say, hey, look, we can't defend ourselves. We know you guys are dogs of war, as Snake is sort of offended to be identified as. We know you guys are mercenaries, the best in the game. Can you please help us? Drive these CIA guys out. And Paz puts on a sort of doe-eyed performance as this little angelic peacenik, and says,
My name is Paz, and I will do anything to protect my namesake. It is my one and only purpose. Please, get them out of my country. Make them leave Costa Rica.
Because she's voiced by Tara Strong, who has different ideas about peace these days as a voice actress. But as Paz, she's almost comically like innocent and the face of a victimized teenager in a peace-loving nation.
Yeah, from what we know about Paz immediately on, she says she'll do anything for her namesake of peace because her parents were killed in the Civil War. She is in fact studying Costa Rica's demilitarized constitution at something like the UN School for Peace Studies or whatever under Galvez. Snake and Kaz kind of immediately clock that Galvez is at least a KGB asset. Mm-hmm. Part of what helps him clock this is the fact that he has this insane red robot lighter hand.
Yeah.
It looks insane. It looks a lot like Venom Snake's Phantom Arm.
I assume it's a direct reference to that.
Oh, yeah. But they immediately are just kind of like, okay, buddy. Like, we see your insane fucking hand. We're not 16-year-olds. I do like the idea that, like, that the hand gave him away. Like, that in this world, that's it. Like, only KGB guys have that red lighter hand.
Yeah. But yes, they meet up with him later without Paz present, I believe.
Yeah.
And they say, look, what's really going on here? And he rather openly says, yeah, I work for the KGB and we're trying to spread, the red menace here in Latin America because it's the cockpit of the Cold War. We want to get back to, the days of the Cuban Missile Crisis for some reason. And here's what I'll say about that, because, I don't really care about the geopolitics of this series or really any video game series. In fact, I think, if anything, Metal Gear is usually pretty sharp on this kind of stuff. I think when it comes to stuff like this, it's really more of a case of writers trying to stick to that Cold War as a gray area trope, where both the KGB and the CIA are just constantly trying to manipulate through the shadows a noble, smaller country, and in this case, the Sandinistas, to the ends of the two big bad superpowers. And that's an old trope. I don't think it's even really political. But I will say, when it comes to Latin America in particular, if you're an American working on a game or a story or something like this, you really don't want to start to look at the scoreboard in terms of evil stuff done in Latin America. It's really no contest.
Yeah.
And there are a couple lines in here that made me, bristle a little bit, like when Amanda says that her dad, the KGB only gave her dad funds for the revolution if he would deal drugs and like start a drug ring. And it's like, no, you're thinking of the Contras who we paid to kill the Sandinistas, not the other
There's
way around.
a lot of this game reminds me of a writer who will go unnamed, but when asked point blank what his politics were, he told a friend of mine, I'm anti-authoritarian.
Okay, I'm going to cut it out. Who are you talking about? Oh, God, yeah.
This game has a ton of that, like, it was 2010,
Yeah. And there's another interesting thing they do, which doesn't push it in that direction, which is they really sort of create this idea that Snake is enamored with Che Guevara.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there's ever been a video game that has so much unambiguously positive things to say about Che Guevara. I mean, there's an entire section of tapes about Che Guevara.
Snake goes, I'm not fit to polish his boots. And you know what's funny about this actually is, I don't want to get us too off topic, but this whole, classic approach that they're taking here with the Cold War, both superpowers basically want to nuke everybody, no matter the consequences, to advance their agenda. And the small countries are the ones fighting for an actual idealistic cause. We see that at the end of this game. In reality, in the Cuban Missile Crisis, which this game is sort of really tapping into, this is almost supposed to be like a sequel to the Missile Crisis. It was Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, actually, who were hoping that the Soviets, and actually urged the Soviets to make a nuclear strike against the United States. Castro wrote a letter to Khrushchev saying, we're probably going to get invaded by the US. They may strike us or you with nukes. You need to hit first. And Che remarked elsewhere that he would support a nuclear strike. And it was actually the cold, gray superpower of the Soviet Union that did not want to do that. And Khrushchev began a very urgent correspondence with John F. Kennedy to make the Americans back off and to unwind the Gordian knot, as Khrushchev called it. So it was actually the exact opposite of what the sort of, I think, common trope is here. But in this game, Snake is going to be the mercenary with a heart of gold who's fighting with the noble insurgents, not the Cold War superpowers. I
will say just one funny thing about this character, Zadornov. I don't think it's a huge, he's identified as the KGB guy immediately.
Yeah.
But later on in Ground Zeroes, one of the side missions you take is it's contracted by the KGB. Yep. And Kaz says at the beginning of the mission, don't worry, these guys have nothing to do with Zadornov. These are just normal KGB guys.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that they went out of their way to exonerate the KGB and say that this guy was a bad apple.
And also you're killing 2 Marines, right?
Yeah.
In that mission, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ground Zeroes is the most politically.
I love Ground Zeroes.
It's up there, man. But yeah, they're kind of vulganizing him in that game, where they're like he was kind of a rogue guy, maybe. But in this game, as far as we know right now, he's just a KGB guy. And actually, the MSF has no problem saying, okay, we'll take a contract with you. I mean, you probably have your own motives, but it is fucked up that this country with no army is being invaded by the CIA.
Yeah.
Oh, but the other thing he says is to really sell this, is he says, the thing is, boss, we have this tape that Paz recorded when she was looking for a friend that had disappeared. We have this tape in which you can hear the voice of the boss. And then Snake has a panic attack.
Yeah, they're initially not going to take it, but he plays this tape for him where you hear Lori Allen, reprising her role as the boss, calling out for Jack, and Zadornov threatens to, when it looks like they're not going to take the contract, he goes, well, I might as well just get rid of this tape by burning it with my evil robot hand. And Snake's like, no, and snatches it.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
He's still, it's been a long time. He's still really not over everything that happened in Selinoyarsk. They take the contract. Snake even, he's not really forthcoming. Kaz says, we're taking this because of that fucking tape, right? And Snake goes, no, I'm taking it because that girl was tortured.
You get to Costa Rica. Miller's with you. This is the first game also, by the way, where codec calls essentially can come in real time. You don't have to stop the game and listen to a dialogue exchange, which in Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain will, whether people prefer it or miss the codec calls, essentially they become just dialogue that happens as you're doing your mission. And I think Peace Walker introduced that as well.
Yeah, and the role of codec as sort of an exposition dump, it got replaced by tapes.
Yeah.
And I think the codec even though it's a radio in 3, the codec in the first 3 games, I think is great. There is a very like radio play element, and so a lot of the style of dialogue where they're not quite as natural a lot of the time. Even though I think the codec calls between Snake and Otacon on the Tinker chapter are sort of a good preview of some of the writing that we'll see in this game and later games. It works for that. It works when you're completely pausing out the world. For these games, you don't really get exposition dump while you're on your mission from the real-time radio. It gets, you get as much exposition as you want for the most part. You can get these tapes either by, S-ranking certain missions or literally finding the tapes in some instances, and you can just listen to your heart's content. I don't know. There are times where I think the tape system is very cool, and I like that it allows them to expound on topics that maybe it would have otherwise gotten cut from the game. Other times, I do feel like there are tapes that are just like filler. And I wonder why they spent time doing it. But for the most part, I think it's a decent solution. It was probably born out of the fact that like there was just no possible way for them to store like animated codec calls on this game, and just having them in pure audio worked way better
with like a portrait.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also allows you to, it's one more thing you can do when you're in between missions on the base. You can just go, oh, this is essentially like a codec call, but while I'm not actively on a mission. And you've got some new weapons. You've got a stun rod, which is essentially your knife. I don't really know why it has to be a stun rod. I guess it's a non-lethal. Maybe it's for the non-M rating, so you don't have to slit guys' throats the way you used to, I imagine. Maybe that's why. But you have a stun rod. You've got your Mark 22 grenades. The layout is a little bit different than previous games. You don't have that kind of wheel that you used to, which I missed at first. More of a side-to-side menu.
So I think this is the worst change in the controls is the way that they do your inventory. Yeah. So it no longer pauses your game to change things in your inventory, which I think in and of itself would be fine. But instead of getting the tile layout that you got in previous games, it's this menu that's like, it takes up your entire screen. You stop moving while you do it. And there's like a half second of like input delay the first time you try to go through it. And I don't know why it's laid out sideways. So
I assume they were trying to accommodate the screen of the PSP or something. I don't know. I mean, or maybe they just thought we need to freshen it up, or I don't know. They go back to the old way really in 5.
Yeah.
More or less. But yeah, it's strange. At first I went, oh, right. Oh, this feels strange. I don't mind the over-the-shoulder shooting. That's in 4. So that wasn't a strange element at all. But you're kind of getting your bearings with this first mission, where you are infiltrating one of the outposts of these CIA mercenaries, and you bust in, you interrogate a guy, you get a little bit of taste of the QTE cutscenes, and the artist this time, moment to moment, is not Yoji Shinkawa, although he was still the art director. It's the artist Ashley Wood, who I believe had worked on graphic novel projects for Metal Gear Solid. I think I own one of them. I think I have the MGS2 Ashley Wood comic. But you are interrogating a guy and looking over some, intel in this base you've captured, and it seems clear, this is before the title card comes up, that whoever is here at the behest of the CIA are moving spears around. And we all know what spears means in operator talk, in intel OPSEC talk. And you better believe it's nuclear weapons. and you see a weird, Terminator 1 style robot helicopter fly by outside, singing a weird little song at the same time, and that pretty much sets us up for the type of stuff we'll be getting into in the game.
Yeah. So these first few missions, this is the first, depending again on how you feel on the canonicity of portable ops, the first canon appearance of the Fulton system as a gameplay feature. Fulton was obviously talked about and explained kind of in depth in Metal Gear Solid 3. It was originally the system they were going to use to extract Sokolov. But in this game, just like how you can't move around prone or pop out against walls, you cannot move bodies. What you can do is you can take a Fulton balloon, and you have about, you can, depending on how much you upgrade it, usually when you upgrade things, you can carry more of them if they're support items. I think the max amount you can take is like 12. But you usually, if you're afraid of someone spotting a body, or you're just trying to build up mother base, you can Fulton them away. Part of what Zunordov gave MSF as their payment for this mission, besides this abandoned facility, is a cargo helicopter that has been retrofitted to be able to use the Fulton system. During these first few missions, most people will find themselves just kind of Fultoning everyone.
Yeah.
You
can't analyze people yet, so you don't know how shitty they are at first, but also you don't have a lot of choice either.
Yeah. So you only initially have a research unit and a combat unit. The combat unit, the outer ops, which I think they did them better here than in Phantom Pain, actually. They can rank up during those, and sometimes they're just passive rank ups they get. And they kind of determine how much money you have at any given time, which is represented by GMP. And the R&D unit, they're developing the trank pistol, the MK22 comes back, and a lot of subsequent weapons. There are a lot of weapons in this game, not the same level of bloat as in MGS4, though it is a little difficult figuring out which you absolutely need and what's just filler. Though I will say they're very generous with GMP. When you develop something that costs a lot of money, it goes away while it's developing, but it instantly comes back once it's finished developing. So I'm sure there is some way to do this to run out of money, but I don't know how. So you can develop a few like shitty weapons. I've developed a ton of them, and it won't really set you back. But you've got everything. You've got everything up and running. The game kind of kicks off from here. Kaz is telling you that it would be a good idea for you to sort of ally with FSLN, the Sandinistas.
Yeah, and that's where we meet in our first comrade in arms, Amanda. And we essentially, you do this by sneaking in and discovering her, but you rescue her and her friends who are about to be attacked by this nefarious organization in country. And of course, they are essentially seeking refuge in Costa Rica from the war in Nicaragua, which is where we're coming from as well, right? That's where MSF was at first. That's that beach in the beginning when you're nude. And she says the CIA were trying to stage a coup similar to Chile, and there's a little bit of backstory. They say that thing that's wasn't really true about how the Sandinistas ran drugs. But I think it's supposed to be, this kind of Hollywood thing of like, my father made compromises, but I'll never let someone else run my revolution, But that leads us to the next mission, which is she's like, please rescue my brother Chico, a character who will be more significant than it initially appears in this trilogy, because he'll lead us into all kinds of crazy places like concentration camp in Guantanamo Bay. So you have to go in and discover Chico, and this is an interesting scene because, as we've discussed, rather than identifying one supervillain moment, these next 3 games are bit by bit, moral compromises or sort of quietly evil decisions that are justified in real time as, part of what, makes sense for our mission and for our goals. You abduct a child soldier. You tell this kid,
right.
Come work for me.
So this is a great scene. So Chico has been he's been captured by these mercenaries. He knows the routes that they take because he storms off whenever he gets into a fight with Amanda, and Amanda's also she's frustrated with him in the sense that like any older sister would be. But also because Chico informed on his comrades under torture. He broke. What a weakling. Yep. What a pussy. This 11-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like 10 years old. Yeah.
He's 10. I think that's fine.
Fucking loser.
Yeah, fucking loser. But you go into this village, you have to every house that has a blue door may potentially hold Chico, and you have to go through a bunch of them. Again, the stealth of this game is incredibly easy. You can just shoot everyone with your tranq pistol. You don't even need to do that. You can just hold everyone up or Fulton them. But you eventually find Chico, and Chico's he's just kind of devastated that he broke, that he let himself down, that he let the FSLN down. That he betrayed his, as he says, his compass by breaking under torture, and he asks Snake to kill him. Snake fires around, but don't worry, he didn't just shoot a child in the head.
Boss, killed a child.
That's why you're the best. That's my favorite.
It's so good. I'm gonna play that in the next one.
That's so good. But he fires around into the wall, and he says, I just wasted a bullet. Don't waste your life.
Yep.
You're a new man from this moment on. You're not the scared little kid who broke under torture. You're going to be brave from here on out. It's okay that happened because sometimes pain gets the better of us, that's an important phrase to remember.
Sure.
Sometimes pain will get the better of us. That will come up a game from now. But you're going to fight with me. You're going to join MSF with your sister, and we're going to make a man out of you. And like there's like swelling heroic music, and Big Boss looks awesome during this. And Chico wipes his tears from his eyes, and it's played as this like great, legend making moment for Big Boss. But yeah, it's incredibly sinister. He's recruiting a child soldier.
The terminus of Big Boss's character is him in the MSX games, in which it looks like Pokemon, the game, but there are all these little kids walking around in this fucking military base you're infiltrating, and it's really creepy because they're just walking around like in cells, and they'll talk to you like, I can't wait till I get to kill for daddy, and it's pretty fucked up. And at the end, Big Boss outlined to Solid Snake, a rookie Solid Snake at the time, he outlines his plan, which are rendered in more sort of cartoonish 1980s MSX level dialogue. He says, my vision is to perpetuate endless wars, kill parents, take the orphans, turn them into soldiers, and keep the entire process going so that soldiers always belong somewhere. Obviously an incredibly twisted vision that involves endless murder and brainwashing of innocence. But it all begins here with Chico, or at least that particular idea is justified in the cult of Big Boss right here. In a scene that's presented as much more, if not even ambiguous, just sort of like heroic and inspiring. but then you have to kind of back up for a second and say, wait a minute, he's 10. And
Yeah.
you just shot a bullet next to his head and said, you work for me now, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty, it's pretty intriguing how they start to build that eventual terror out of this encounter with Chico.
Yeah, and it's again something that I like about all the Big Boss sort of prequel games. They never do. There was a singular moment that he goes, "I'm bad now." It's a series of choices, and you can see as he starts to increasingly believe in his own legend, he could do worse and worse things that even you in the moment might go, "Oh, that's sweet." So, Chico is thrilled that he gets to live on this sort of gross oil platform with this really cool guy and his life partner and his sister. Mm-hmm. He tells you about the mercenaries' shipping routes. He says he followed them up to a certain point, but there was a spirit there, kind of like a what do they call them in this game? So they don't use the term UFO, but UMAs. He calls it La Basilica. It's
yes.
He calls it a spirit. It sounds like he's describing that weird sort of drone thing you saw that looked kind of like a supersized version of the Cypher drones from Metal Gear Solid 2. Mm-hmm. So you follow the train, and this leads us into our second boss fight of the game. We, if we didn't mention it, right before you go to rescue Chico, you have your first boss fight, which is against an LAV, which is a sort of lightly armored personnel carrier.
Yeah.
This is our introduction to the vehicle fights in this game. Yep. You probably should have developed the light anti-tank weapon by this point. It's one of the only things you can develop. It is possible to beat both these bosses without doing that, though it's pretty fucking tedious.
It's a little... I tried that with every one of these. I just let the waves of troops come. I tranked them, Fultoned them, when the vehicle couldn't see. And then finally the guy pokes his head out. You don't even have to break the glass in the case of the helicopter or shoot the tank at all. And they'll come out, and then you just trank them and you're done. I don't know if you get more for doing that, but you get an S rank if you do it quickly.
Yeah. Well, you get an S rank as long as you don't kill anyone, and the best, most guaranteed way to not kill anyone is to just never alert the troops or the whoever's driving the vehicle. That it becomes much harder when you fight these much spongier versions with much more troops. Like in some of these missions, there are 36 troops for you to take out, which is you literally don't have enough Fultons until you get the Fulton launcher, and things like that. But you do eventually get the gear necessary to do that. I played a few before I had the Fulton launcher and the bandana. I had multiple missions where I had to just gun down 40 guys and then take away 80% of the tank's health just to get past that mission to get to lead into the weird date with Kaz and date with Paz missions. You have to kill 400 guys to get to this gay sex scene.
Yep.
But it's worth it.
Of course it is. But yes, there's that LAV fight, which is the first introduction to those kind of vehicle / mob boss fights. But we have to go stop the delivery of nukes.
Yeah.
Nearby this coffee plantation. But unfortunately, we're late. We can smell the for some reason you can smell that they were there. I don't remember what it was. Snake says something about that. So you know which one they were in. You do a tank battle. But you eventually follow this payload, and you follow it into a garage where you meet Huey. who is first of all, unlike his son, is wheelchair bound. He doesn't have his cool legs yet that he gets in the next game, but he's in a wheelchair, and he's arguing with this bald man in suspenders who has a tattoo on the back of his head, which is a detail I really like. He's got this peace tattoo on the back of his head, and one of the all-time Kojima names, sort of presaging his Death Stranding style, because this guy's name is Hot Coldman, and he is the CIA station chief of Central America. It's later revealed he's been involved in our saga more than we can tell right now, but that's all we know about him at the moment, because he used to be director of the CIA and he wants back in. He's arguing with Huey about his plans to bring online a new form of sort of mutually assured destruction, a technology of mutually assured destruction of deterrence, and flashes a V for victory sign and says we need to meet peace halfway. Thoughts on Hot Coldman, Felix?
Hot Coldman is interesting. In a lot of ways, it feels like, like so much of this game, it is them taking a first stab at things that they would sort of go all the way with in Phantom Pen. Hot Coldman, I always read him as them giving a practice run to Skullface. He's ultimately very different than Skullface, but there's a lot of similarities, including this idea that he's been lurking in the background.
Yes, I was thinking that.
Just as far as as villains like this go, and by like this, I mean a villain who none of their story could be considered tragic, or at least you could understand it on sort of a base empathetic level, like with Liquid or somebody, or the boss. He's more in that I'm bad style of villain. Really not the worst as far as guys like that go.
I like him. I think his motivation is interesting. He is not I'm going to blow up the world. He has a very strange and blinkered idea of what will secure peace, but it's that constant throwing up of the peace sign while he's risking the extermination of one hemisphere, because he is so dead convinced that his philosophy is that deterrence is the way we'll achieve peace, nuclear deterrence, but there's no way to rely on human beings to actually follow through on the idea of mutually assured destruction, which defeats, of course, the whole purpose. It needs to be completely guaranteed that launching a nuke would be suicidal. Otherwise, one side could launch under the premise that the other side will chicken out and therefore get one over on the other in the Cold War. He brings up, they don't shout him out by name, but Vasily Arkhipov, who was the Soviet submarine commander who refused to fire during the Cuban Missile Crisis a nuclear-armed torpedo against the Americans who were crowding them out on their way to Cuba, which, of course, would have begun the first nuclear exchange between the two superpowers in the Cold War. Coldman's solution to this problem of human agency is to create an AI, a robot, that will rationally and irrefutably, let me use another word, rationally and coldly respond no matter what the situation is, and thereby guarantee that any nuclear exchange would be suicidal and finally secure a long-lasting peace. And Huey is arguing with him. I don't remember. I think Huey's just you're using my research for something I didn't agree on or something like that. And so he pushes Huey down the stairs. in his scooter.
Yeah, and this, honestly, the fact that he did this to Huey, it makes him one of the best people. That,
on a personal level, yes.
One of the best people we ever meet.
Until Ocelot almost breaks his leg off clean in Phantom Pain. This is a pretty good knock on Huey.
But, for now, we're not quite aware that this is the worst and most annoying guy to ever live.
Yes.
In
Huey, you mean?
Yeah, Big Boss just thinks, oh my God, you push that poor man in a wheelchair down the stairs.
Yeah.
This precedes our first fight with one of the actual sort of stand-in for Metal Gear. There is a true Metal Gear in this game.
Yeah.
Two true Metal Gears, kind of. But the AI weapons is the term that the game uses.
Yes.
This precedes our fight with the pupa.
Mm-hmm.
I for the most part, I like the AI weapon fights. I like them, most of them, a lot more than I like the vehicle fights.
Mm-hmm.
I think pupa is a really, I think one of the better ones.
Yeah.
It greatly resembles Sahelanthropus. I think
Shagohod, you mean?
Sorry, Shagohod.
Yeah.
Shagohod. I think Big Boss even makes note of this.
Yeah. It basically is Shagohod with an AI pod on the front. More or less. Yeah. Which makes sense because one of the things that we do get, I don't know if in that conversation with Coldman, maybe after this boss fight, Huey cops to stealing Granon's research. And it's one of the first kind of morally ambiguous things we get from him is like, wait, so you're a thief. You're ripping off other people's research. And Huey's like, well, I made up my own thing. I put my own spin on it. But Snake's kind of like, oh, okay. But that's why it looks so much like the Shagohod.
Yeah. And another characterization thing I like during this fight, too, is Huey is giving you tips on, how to best incapacitate this. For a lot of these AI weapons, they have, they'll have, a long, it kind of looks like, what are those things that linemen use to go up and, fix power lines with?
Mm-hmm.
It will look like one of those, but with, a chainsaw or a machine gun attached, or both. Mm-hmm. You can destroy weapons like that. You can destroy individual parts of them. You can only target the AI pod. When you start trying to sort of farm these AI weapons for parts for your Metal Gear. But Huey, while he's trying to advise you on how to, shoot at the AI pod and take this thing out, he's amazed at all the capabilities his creation has.
Yeah, he's getting a little giddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought the pupa was fine. I like it better than the flying one.
That one's annoying.
Cocoon, is that one called? I can't remember.
No, that's Chrysalis.
Chrysalis, sorry, yes. So then we have a proper chat with Huey, and he tells us what I kind of front-loaded there about Coldman, about this idea of solving mutually assured destruction once and for all with the idea of an automated response, somewhat based on the Soviet dead hand system, which was sort of satirized in Dr. Strangelove, just not unrelated, of course, to one of the characters that's introduced later. And the U.S. had something similar. That we both kind of were striving for these automated systems that would put the real fear of an unstoppable exchange should one person be dumb enough to start the conflict. So that's what's at stake at the moment. And we make common cause with Huey, and he joins the team because Coldman is, as we just saw, not the nicest guy to work for because he'll push your disabled colleagues down the stairs if he thinks you're mouthing off. So they've been the nukes, however, have been loaded onto the namesake of the game, which is the most Metal Gear thing of any of these creations, which is the basilisk Chico is describing, or as we'll soon learn, the Peace Walker project. So we have to go find. First, we have to find Strangelove. Yeah.
Huey, also in this initial conversation, he tells you, he introduces you to the sort of Emmerich family curse. He refers to his father working on the Manhattan Project, and he says he was really proud of it, but he also paid a price because he thinks his dad being exposed to enriched uranium caused Huey to be born with these congenital birth defects that have always prevented him from walking. He says he used to be really proud that his dad helped create this weapon that he felt prevented all these deaths until a Japanese kid went to their school and showed him pictures of the destruction.
Yep.
And then he makes a big show of how devastating he thought this was, and then he goes, and think about how fucked up my stupid life is because of my dad's cum getting irradiated. That's even worse. He doesn't say it like that, but it's basically like as whiny as that.
Yep.
And he says that he was working on these AI systems to try and like write the Emmerich family legacy by, creating a system that is sort of like a system with no human gaps that will engender this sort of enforced peace. And this is where the great line about, there's no major conflicts. Like, yeah, I guess a few people, there have been wars in other places. But, for the most part, this is
talking
pretty good.
about one of them right now, in Nicaragua and now Costa Rica. But yeah, sure, Huey.
And he tells you the researcher behind these AI pods is this woman named Dr. Strangelove, who he says hates the shit out of him, but you should find her.
He says it several times, like, oh, does she hate me that much? Which we'll get to in a second. He's really pathetic, as we've been describing. He also, I think, around this time says, by the way, I've been thinking about building this cool thing called Metal Gear. And if you want, I could get started on that. Every time you fight one of these AI things, bring me back parts. And Snake's like, what do you mean? What do you mean Metal Gear? That's not your idea. And he's like, well, and we saw this in Snake Eater. We saw the photo of Granin and Huey. And we learn more in this game that Huey essentially will go on to rip off everything Granin was building. The Shagohod, I should correct myself, what I said earlier, was of course Sokolov's idea. So he also ripped off Sokolov, but he will especially rip off Granin. So we got Huey on our team now as well. So now we have to go find. He gives us the key card to get into Strangelove's base. So that's another sneaking mission. But along the way, we meet Cecile, right?
Cecile, right? Yeah. So you find her. She was up in a tree actually, and Cecile is actually. This is, from what I can understand. So there is a person that, at least at the time of this game, worked at Konami as, I think, a community manager for Konami Paris, who has the exact same name as Cecile in this game, that I think she asked Kojima to put her in a game, and he was like, "You're a woman? Absolutely." And it does look a lot like her, too. Like, it looks exactly like her.
Okay, it's all becoming clear.
Yeah.
Because it's honestly, I always forget about this character. Because I'm just like, why do they need to, why are they here? I mean, she's the woman who Paz was looking for. She has a role, but I'm always like, oh, yeah, Cecile.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of superfluous character, but she helps, her other interactions with the characters aren't that necessary, but I didn't mind her. Her main function in this mission is you're trying to use Huey's card to get into Dr. Strangelove's facility. When his card doesn't work, he goes, "Oh my God, did she hate me that much?"
Yep.
And Snake's like, "Oh God,
get it together."
So then you ask Cecile, like, "Is there any other way to get in here?"
Right.
And she says she swiped an access card, but a soldier in an orange jacket took it from her. So you have to backtrack through this level that you just went through to find the guy with the orange jacket, and you have to, trank him or knock him out or kill him and pat his body down to get that ID card. This level, they do something that I thought was a very interesting idea and a good way to try to make things a little bit more interesting, given how easy all these stealth sections are. They introduce a type of just regular mob that we have never really seen in these games before, which is snipers and scouts that are so well camouflaged, they won't show up on your sort of like your sonar thing. And you either need to see them with your night vision goggles, or later in the game, you can actually develop the heavily retconned Soliton radar about 10 years before Mei Ling is born. It will show them on your sort of mini radar HUD, but
or you could just look very closely if you want.
Right. Yeah, at this point in the game, you probably don't have night vision goggles, and you definitely don't have Soliton, so you just look very carefully for these guys. And I really like this. I thought it was...
Me too.
It was a new look for these games. It was some much welcome difficulty for these stealth sections that are otherwise like pretty easy as far as the series goes.
Yeah,
and
I totally agree.
Yeah, it makes you navigate the levels in an entirely new way. They're a great hazard. I really like this a lot.
You if you see like a path that looks a little too straightforward, now you're like, I'm going to go up on this ledge instead, and then you'll probably see a guy who was about to scope you out if had you just gone for the easier path forward. So they just start to introduce a little bit of tension. You need to be on your toes. You can't just cruise through this. I agree. And I like that. I like how long this section is. I wish more of the sneaking missions weren't just like 3 screens, because you really have to backtrack in order to find the guy in the orange jacket. It's not that hard. Once you find him, you just hold him up and get the card. But it felt a little bit more meaty with all these guys camoed up.
Yeah.
So you get the card, and you backtrack again to the Mayan temple where Strangelove is working out of, which is neat. And here we meet Dr. Strangelove. She is she's got like sort of short hair, sort of Hot Topic style, like blazer and necktie. And she is pretty pissed off at you because you killed her hero, the boss. And she thinks your whole explanation for why that had to happen is a bunch of nonsense. And she makes it clear she's looking for the true story of what happened to the boss. And it's sort of implied she's been sort of using the CIA to that end by saying she will work with Coldman to develop the AI with some of the most rational, with like, by building into the AI one of the most rational, like sharp minds any military figure ever possessed, which was the boss. But her true purpose, even beyond that, is to really just reconstruct the mind of the boss into the AI so she can crack it open and find out what really happened to her. And Snake is intrigued enough by this that he goes and looks at the AI. But then I think he kind of literally has a panic attack.
Yeah,
in conversing with it, and you black out.
Yeah. She kind of dares you this first time to destroy the AI pod, the boss AI pod, and you pass out before you can rip all these circuit boards out, and you wake up to your second AI weapon boss fight, this time against the Chrysalis, which, if you did not start developing the I think it's the FJM-43 in this game, the Stinger missile.
Yep.
Go back and start developing it now, because otherwise this is going to suck. It's going to suck a little bit with it, because this is kind of annoying.
Yeah, it moves around a lot. It sends its little drones down, and you want to switch over to like a machine gun for them or whatever. But it was okay. It was just less fun than dodging and weaving around the pupa.
Yeah. It ends up, by the time you start getting more advanced levels of Stingers, and then the more experimental version, you even I got the level 5 version of it, and even the custom version ended up being the easiest version of the custom AI weapon fights. But this early on in the game, it isn't, you don't die a bunch of times or anything, but it can be tedious.
Yep. We should say, although at this point, the other big Kubrick reference going on here with the AI pods, and particularly the boss AI pod, is 2001, because there's a big red eye in the middle of the frame talking to you, just like Hal from the famous segment of 2001: A Space Odyssey. The boss's AI is talking to you much like Hal did in that movie.
This is after you beat the Chrysalis. This is another great character scene between Snake and Miller. Miller brings up that Snake was unable to rip the circuit boards out of that AI pod, and says, "You still haven't let her go. It's been 10 years." Mm-hmm. And you still think there's something you can find out, some piece of information or some version of events that is going to change the way you feel. Mm-hmm. And Snake kind of swears to Kaz as his friend that the next time he sees that AI pod, he will destroy it. He will have the wherewithal. He will realize it's just a machine. It's not her. And I really love this because it's
Me too.
Yeah, you really see why Kaz was his number two. Mm-hmm. He more than like he admires Big Boss and does sort of like blow up his head in this way that a lot of other characters do, but he is actually able to talk to him as an equal
and challenge him.
Really. Yeah, and challenge him, and it makes the events that follow in subsequent games way more tragic. Yeah. Another character thing that I loved here too. This was before Chrysalis or meeting Cecile. When Huey starts talking about building a Metal Gear for you, and Snake goes, "Weren't you just saying that like you don't want to build these?" Huey goes, "Yeah, but you took out a pupa all by yourself. Like, you're amazing." And Big Boss is like, "Yeah, I guess I did." Which is like, Solid Snake would never, like, every time anyone says, "Hey, you're certainly better than an average soldier who shits his pants and cries," he's like, "All soldiers are the same."
Yeah,
I'm a piece of shit.
I forgot to put this in the last episode, but there's that conversation where I think it's an optional codec call in Metal Gear Solid 4 where you've just traversed the place you fought the tank in MGS1 with the grenades.
Yeah,
and Otacon's like, "By the way, how did you beat that tank?" And he's like, "Grenades." And he's like, "You're crazy. You're the shit."
I love that call.
Breaks down. And old Snake is unbothered by that. But Otacon is more earnestly gassing him up. Huey, you can detect it's a little bit more like flattery in order to gain his trust and patronage, maybe. But yes, and by the way, the reason it's implied, if not outright stated, that the reason Snake is tempted to maybe open the mind of the AI version of the boss as well is because he's starting to doubt whether or not he was lied to by Eva, essentially,
right?
Or that Eva was lied to, or whatever. That the cover story could go deeper, and because at first you're like, wait, you know all this? She told you like what was going to happen, but if you're in love with this person from 10 years ago and you can't let it go, and then this scientist tells you I can reconstruct their mind, you're probably going to start to question whether you do know the whole story. And the only way to really find out is to take this person up on reconstructing that person's psyche. So that's why Snake is beginning to wobble a little bit about whether or not to destroy this AI outright.
Yeah, and I like that Strangelove repeatedly asking him what actually happened, even though he does know the answer or should know the answer, that alone sort of makes him start to doubt it too.
Yeah, he's repeating the cover story.
It's sort of, right. It's sort of like he was looking for any excuse to find a different version of events.
And as we discussed in our episode about 3, even her speech is pretty fucking cryptic and incoherent.
Yeah.
So he's probably desperate as anyone would be for a more concise and complete picture of what the fuck she was talking about, with like, "Oh, I went into space, but also the Bay of Pigs was bad." And he probably was very thirsty to understand exactly what she meant in that speech with all the flowers. So yeah, that's now complicating his mission here. And we pretty quickly reach Peace Walker's hangar after fighting the next AI thing, the cocoon, right?
Right. We actually take the boss's old horse over to this quarry where, yes, the cocoon boss fight and later the Peace Walker boss fight happens.
Mm-hmm.
The cocoon is, to this point, it is definitely like the tankiest of all the AI weapons you're going to fight. Though I would say one of the easiest ones, because you can hide under it for pretty much the entire time and just poke out and blast its AI pod.
Yeah.
It can be pretty tedious if you don't have, like, you know, a Carl Gustav or something. There's also a guard rush segment here. There are a couple of these guard rush segments.
This is like the stadium one, right? Basically.
Yeah. It's a big mining quarry. There are a few guard rushes like this where there's, like, 25, 30, 35 guards to take on. That, there are a ton of iterations on this idea across the series, and sometimes I think they do a really interesting job of setting it up and giving you an arena to fight these guys in and giving you tons of options. Sometimes it's not so interesting. I didn't really mind this because the over-the-shoulder camera, it does make things a bit less clunky than trying to do this in, like, Metal Gear Solid 1.
Of course.
But I will say the just general mechanics of combat against other humans in this game are not the best. I don't really think you can really lay that at the feet of the development team. They were given the thankless task of developing a shooter for, the fucking PSP.
The reticle is fucking enormous in this game. The first thing I noticed, I'm like, oh, and of course that's because it was on a small screen. But yeah, you beat the cocoon, get into the Peace Walker hangar, and this is where we get confronted by Coldman again, because we sneak into the boss's AI pod again. This time we can't quite resist. Snake starts to ask her about Snake Eater, but the AI doesn't seem to know what the fuck he's talking about.
Yeah,
which is not satisfying. But right then the Team Coldman cracks open the pod, and he explains more completely what I was alluding to when we first meet him. But he also adds, as we now know, that he was the one who planned, as chief of intelligence, he planned Operation Snake Eater, and was dropped from it, I guess, to hush him up, so that it wasn't, or I don't know, like he was dropped. He was relocated after that. But would that mean that he was? Don't we see the DCI in the White House at the end of Snake Eater?
Yeah. I mean, that actually comes up.
Because that character is in this, right? So they already relocated Coldman, I suppose, at that point.
I think there's a few problems with this. Coldman characterizes him being sent here to be the station chief for, like, all of Latin America as, like, him being demoted after Snake Eater. He calls it this I'm going to make my name with this, and I'm going to get out of this backwater. And it's like, just this whole part of the world the CIA did not give a shit about during the 70s. Yeah. Latin America.
Well, I mean, other characters, Zdarnov says this is the place we'll win the Cold War. It doesn't quite gel exactly, with what everyone else is saying about this location. At any rate, they do this again with Skullface, where Snake Eater was it involved more people than we initially thought. But at any rate, we subdue all these guys who have surrounded us. But I think somehow they still get the better of us, and we end up once again in a prison cell. It looks a lot like the cell in Snake Eater, because we're shirtless once again. And that's after the torture scene, the infamous torture scene in this game, where we have to button mash. How did this go for you? this time.
This, God, this is fucking sadistic. I don't know if it's because they were doing this with like 10-year-olds in mind who have tiny thumbs and are already sticky. But this was a fucking pain in the ass. The thing that I really hate about this is a lot of people don't like these cutscene QTEs. I don't really mind them for the most part. I think some of them are cool. This one sucks.
Yep.
And even after you beat it in the story mode, you still have to go through this button mashing thing every fucking time. And that sucks because the prison escape scene that follows is like one of the best escape scenes that they have you play in the entire series.
Yeah.
And so I have also, you can rescue another prisoner that will almost always be S ranked.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to like farm for MSF, you're definitely going to go back and play this mission. I even started looking for like if there were like exploits to get through this, and no, you just have to get really good at pressing triangle.
The first time I ever did it, it was bad. I was just I had to take a break. Like I kept failing the final bit of it or something. This time I got through it in one go, but it's a pain in the ass.
I hate the other thing that I hate about the button mashing mechanic here is it's otherwise like a very good scene. And I wish I could just enjoy the scene itself without like worrying about how quickly I'm going to be able to press triangle and if I'm going to be able to keep that up for like 55 seconds. I think they end up doing some interesting stuff with Strangelove's character in general. But I like the anguish that Hader is able to convey with his performance. That he's definitely not over it. She even calls out that he has the exact same scar on his chest
and the bandana.
Yeah, I also think he, like the fact that he says nothing and maintains the cover story, that she's able to finish the AI because of that. That she knows the boss so well at this point that that is enough of an answer for her. I thought that was good, but yeah, if anyone knows how to like, I don't know, write a script that presses triangle 1,000 times in a second so I can just get through this, please let me know.
It's unfortunate, but yeah, you're right. The prison escape scene, it's much more action packed than Snake Eater. Snake Eater, you make Johnny have diarrhea, Johnny Senior have diarrhea, or whatever, any number of other things, and then you're out. Which kind of is cool in its own way because you just feel like all the action is happening in Groznygrad, and you're just you're sort of on the outskirts, sneaking in. But in this game, it's a real prison break. You have to be careful, and like you said, you can get other guys out as well, and it's cool. Ultimately, we go back to the Peace Walker hangar. Let's try this again. And at this point, the AI pod that the boss's AI pod is called the Mammal Pod, right? This is a little bit of the classic Metal Gear needless multiplication of things, but Huey developed the reptile pod, and that's responsible for Peace Walker's general like nervous system or just movement. But the mammal pod is in charge of the higher order decision making when it comes to the nuclear deterrence. Is that basically correct? Yeah.
And there's some more of like Huey being a hack and not as good, not in the like tier 1A of scientists in the Metal Gear world. When Strangelove explains that when they tried to operate it just off the reptile pod, none of it worked, and it took Strangelove's mammal pod to fully get things rolling.
And this is the sort of the next piece of Coldman's plan. He's revealed that what he's going to do to impress his own government back into letting him to be a director of Central Intelligence is demonstrate Peace Walker And how he's going to do that is activate Peace Walker, which is it can switch between bipedal and four-legged transversal. He's going to march it, into Nicaragua, I think?
Yeah.
Pretty sure. He's going to march it out of Costa Rica into Nicaragua to show that it's just an impressive armored vehicle. And then he's going to nuke Mother Base, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because what better target? So he's going to start with Mother Base and demonstrate the capacity of Peace Walker to make this nuclear strike. But is the plan that he's going to frame up? Because it has to be to demonstrate it as a deterrent, right? So is the plan that he's going to say Mother Base was going to shoot at me, so I'm now going to destroy Mother Base? And he's going to like fake that data or a signal or something?
I forgot if they actually explained that part. This is the problem with Coldman and this type of villain sometimes I'm sure that maybe it's on a tape somewhere or I missed it, but it gets into like solidus territory where it's like, okay, what's the plan here?
Right.
But this precedes the first Peace Walker fight, though.
Yes.
Which there's a much more difficult version of this later on in the game. But this first version of this fight, where you fight Peace Walker in the same arena that you fought the Cocoon in, it's depending on how much you have delved into the base system and the weapon development system, I could see this being really annoying if you've not really engaged with those parts of the game. Though, if you've just been going along with the game's generalized recommendations, you should have enough things that you'll probably make short work of it if you're targeting the AI pod. This the scene that follows is, you bang it up, but it's fucking gigantic, by the way. It's like half the size of Arsenal gear, but it goes into quadruped mode, and it's like galloping over the border. So you chase it on the boss's horse, and this is thankfully not as intensive as the torture scene, but you do have to evade like trees and missiles while galloping along on the boss's horse. It eventually you get to this very steep incline that unfortunately ends up being the demise of the boss's horse.
Yeah, it's sad.
I mean, it's sad. I think we probably all knew that horse was not making it to the end of this game.
Sure. By the way, I just looked it up, and it is. I think it's true that Coldman was going to create false signals and warnings that Mother Base was launching a nuke, thereby justifying Peace Walker's attack.
Okay, that makes sense.
Makes sense. It was going to be a false flag. Is this where we lose Paz?
Yes. This Coldman, he's following Peace Walker in a helicopter, and he's taken Paz as a hostage.
And I think this is generally explained by like, hey, wait, where's the professor? Where Zdarnov? Where's Zdarnov? Where's Paz? Well, they both disappeared. And we think, oh, that darn Coldman. But when it's this military base, this U.S. missile base, that's where Peace Walker is relocated. When we get there, what the heck do we find but Soviets operating on a U.S. military base? And this is the big switcheroo. We see Paz like in a video feed, and we say, hey, we're coming to get you. Hurry up, Coldman's about to do his big false flag. I think there's a helicopter that you have to fight.
There's a big soldier rush thing that kicks this chapter off, kind of. You have to like gun down like 50 guys, and it doesn't have a boss health bar, but there is it's either hind A or hind D, and it's the penultimate challenge of this giant shoot 'em up level. It's kind of the boss of that section, at least. because after you take that down, you just have to take out 5 heavily armored guys who, by that point, aren't a huge threat to you. I don't really love this part. I like the infiltration of the missile base that precedes this. I think it's one of the better interiors they did. I like the hazard of the kidnapper drones. I think it's a fun calculation whether you're going to shoot them down and raise an alert or, throw a chaff grenade out there. There's a lot of fun verticality here. You even get like a few options in how you traverse some parts of it, though. This is overall quite a linear game. The sort of like shoot 'em up segment that follows, I just think fundamentally no matter how much they streamline the controls or improve things from the first game in the series, just as far as combat mechanics, something designed for the PSP it's never going to feel that great. And so having a level where you're just supposed to gun down 30 or 40 guys, even if you can do it non-lethally, is just never going to be that fun.
Yep.
Though as a set piece, I think it's pretty good. And of course, Heavens, you get a blaring rendition of Heaven's Divide during the climax when you're taking down the helicopter.
No, it is a good set piece, and it gets us to the first version of the sort of final twist.
Paddles of white cover fields flowing in grieving tears, and all the hearts once new, owned and shattered now. Love can kill, love will die. Give me wings to fly, fleeing this world so cold. I just wonder why. Cold as a dark, now my words are frosted with every breath.
Right, so this is where Coldman's big plan is fully revealed, because we see Soviet soldiers are, in league in some way with him. He's programmed Peace Walker to make an example of Mother Base, which will be said to be a Soviet, target after it was revealed falsely that the Soviets were planning to hit America. But then all of the soldiers, the Soviet guys, turn on Coldman. And it turns out that Zadornov had been partnering with Coldman because I guess they both do make the peace sign throughout the game.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of thematic idea that Zadornov must have told Coldman, I will work with you to secure deterrence because I want that for my country too, even if, maybe he said even if Moscow doesn't. So I'll work with you on this, but it was a double crossing because he wants
to do his version of a false flag attack where they launch the nuke at Cuba.
Yes.
And not just that, but also kill Big Boss, who by this point is sort of a global hero on par with Che Guevara. He takes Paz's hand and tries to tell her to shoot Coldman, and she doesn't want to do it. And then he just pulls the trigger for her.
And this is Zadornov's ultimate reveal. Is he's going to stage a false flag so that Cuba is nuked, and it will create anti-American sentiment throughout Latin America, something that was sorely lacking up until this moment. This is prevented because Kaz has backed us up, as has Amanda and the Sandinistas. They rush in and they overwhelm Zadornov and his troops. Coldman is still alive, though, because he's slowly dying. I think Zadornov made sure to preserve him because he has some code that he needed Coldman to enter.
Right. Well. Okay. So this is the famous Vic Boss scene. All the Sandinistas and even MSF are chanting it. It's a very triumphant scene. I like this scene, even though I think the intrigue stuff sort of falls apart completely here. They're taking Coldman on an MSF chopper with Paz and with Strangelove. And Strangelove is kind of warmed to Snake at this point. In part because she saw that the boss's horse allowed Snake to ride it, which told her that he was someone special to her, because that horse would not allow anyone else to ride it. But Coldman, sort of from his deathbed in the helicopter, activates Peace Walker to, I think, where is it firing on the final time? Is it MSF again? I don't think it's MSF.
No, it's going to launch. It's going to launch at Cuba, but he's still doing the false flag signal to Washington.
Yes.
So they think that they're going to get data that a Soviet attack is imminent.
Yes.
And it will demonstrate, and then Peace Walker will be used anyway, because that's the code he puts into his little portable nuclear football or whatever. I don't think it's well communicated what the fuck is happening at that moment, but basically, yes, he's still looking to produce this test case in which Washington will have to rely on Peace Walker in the future, I guess. This will teach them to do that. Whatever. The stakes at this moment are now that the president is at the SALT II talks, I think. This would be Ford at that moment, I believe. And he will not be there. He won't be in the room when this data hits the White House. So all of the sort of deep state guys are the ones making the decision here. And we talk to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and we convince him, like, hey, this is a false flag. Do not treat this as a real nuclear threat. Do not hit the Soviet Union. But then a deep state guy pulls a gun out and says, no, let's just do it. Which is pretty fun. And I think it's assumed that the guy we're talking to was one of the guys in the room during the Snake Eater ending. I think it's
because Snake mentions, when I got the second highest decoration for some reason, I refused to shake the DCI's hand. Right. And he goes, only a guy who is there would know that.
Right.
And that
even though there were photos taken.
Oh my God, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought of that.
Well, there
right
wasn't
now.
video, so it's hard to capture someone not shaking someo's hand, I guess.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. But okay, so the Peace Walker fight, this is when, like, the boss fights that you're going to be doing in this sort of, like, weird quasi endgame grindy part of the game sort of get queued up, because Peace Walker is very bullet spongy. It takes a lot of, even if you've upgraded like all the best rocket launchers, like the Carl Good stuff, even if you've upgraded them all the way, it can still take a while. And it can be very frustrating too, because it has flamethrowers that not just, eat up your health, but they take away stuff from your sight gauge, which functions like the stamina gauge in Snake Eater. And you will just be concussed on the ground waiting for it to fill back up, while Peace Walker just blasts missiles into your ass and you're unable to even go into your inventory. You'll end up like I did a kind of a shitty loadout for this fight once, and I ran out of resupplies. Like, I didn't even realize that could happen, because you have to do a lot of resupplies early on because you have weaker weapons, but I never went through so many of them that, like, I ran out of markers even though that that ended up happening to me here. But I don't know. It's when you get better weapons and you're able to more meaningfully subtract from its health bar, it's not as bad. There's also a very weird mechanic where how quickly you recover from your psych gauge being expended and how much certain attacks take away from your psych gauge is affected by your heroism level, which I think is incredibly weird. But I don't know, not horrible, but certainly not the best fight. And another instance, I think, of something being designed around co-op. So yeah, you have the phone call with the Deep State guys, reminding them that, you know, you snubbed the DCI in the handshake while getting your Distinguished Service Cross from Lyndon B. Johnson. That's good enough for Mr. Deep State, except another Deep State guy pulls a gun on him. Ultimately, this all gets resolved. When Deep Stateman pulls a gun on him, this ultimately all gets resolved, though, by Peace Walker, which you've been unable. You've gone in, you've ripped all the circuit boards out. All the decision-making power, I think, goes to the reptile pod, and it decides to just kill itself. To stop broadcasting the signal, because it ended up being a very good replication of the boss, and it ended up doing what the boss would have done.
Right. Way to go, Strangelove.
Good job.
You were responsible for one of the most grating and annoying segments in the entire series when you were torturing our balls, but you did recreate the boss rather well and prevent nuclear Armageddon. So, you know, I mean, I think that's a net positive for Strangelove here.
You did also kind of cause it in the first, but whatever. What?
I mean, we're none of us perfect, but yeah. And there's kind of a classic silly Metal Gear thing here about like doing this thing about how she wanted to sing instead of fight or something, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, she really seemed like she loved war more than like anything. It seemed like she did that her entire life and was great at it.
If anything, like her name was the Joy, like you would expect it to be laughter almost, you know, like something a little bit more evocative. I guess you could say singing comes from joy, but it also doesn't very often. It's often like you sing in all kinds of situations. So I don't know if they were going for the joy, you know, idea or what, but anyway, everyone's like, wow, good job, Robo Boss. And Snake throws the bandana. He's like, I can finally move on from this, even though that's also not true. And he throws the bandana into the wind at that point. Yeah.
Well, it's his takeaway from this is kind of weird, though. I think, I think it's good writing, though. I think he basically his takeaway from this thing that everyone else's takeaway is like, wow, the boss was such a hero. That's absolutely what she would have done. She would have killed herself to save the world like she did in real life. And Snake's interpretation of it is that she willingly laid down her gun
for her master. Yeah. Like for essentially for a state. Like for a politically opportunistic government, you know, a nation state as well. Whereas Big Boss's whole thing after this is going to be, we don't answer to any governments. You know, we're a government of soldiers, for soldiers, by soldiers. She should have, if she was really about everything she said, why would she have allegiance to these bunch of skeezy politicians? Is what I kind of got from his.
Yeah. And it's right. It's not supposed to like make a ton of sense unless it's in the context of this guy has been getting his ego inflated this entire time. He's been kind of not driven insane, but kind of been driven to the brink by repeatedly hearing her voice and having to relive these memories. He's well on his way to becoming like a pretty fucking bad guy. Like,
even in Metal Gear Solid 4, even in that final scene, canonically the final scene in the series of the Solid series, he's at the boss's grave to sort of apologize, So this is probably that moment, or the beginning of a series of moments where he starts to feel like, I'm going to overcome my obsession with her by turning against her, really, by saying she was a sellout.
Yeah, by surpassing her.
Yeah, exactly. I'll surpass her, which is why he then says, you know what? I am Big Boss. I am better than her, which is kind of neat as a way to sort of keep sketching out this character's spiraling into madness,
Yeah, I thought that was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame that what follows, the true end game, is very weirdly paced. And you cannot attribute all of this to planning around co-op, though some of it you can. It
reminded me of Phantom Pain, to be totally honest with you.
Oh, yeah. It is very grindy, very repetitive, and it's a very weird way to end a game.
Yeah,
I'll say that. So, okay, the big bad is defeated. Zadornov has been captured. Paz is safe. Everyone gets to go home.
Well, Zadornov's our prisoner, but yes.
Yeah. Well, you put him in the brig. He does have a pretty high intelligence stat, which I would argue against. But so this chapter 5, is built around Zadornov escaping and getting recaptured 7 times.
The Tom and Jerry chapter of the game.
It's so I think it is supposed to be silly, but it's like Big Boss. I feel like his character at this point would have killed him around time number 3.
Yeah, at the very least, it's a waste of resources, if anything.
Yeah,
I mean, this is just not. You got to do cost benefit analysis. You're running a business here,
Yeah. So all of his escape scenes, there are 7 escape missions.
Yep.
You're basically going through most of the jungle and beach levels from the early game. And you typically will find Zadornov either hugging a wall towards the end of a stage, or one time hiding in a cardboard box. And you usually just CQC him or stick him up and Fulton him out of there. The problem is, though, to unlock subsequent Zadornov capture missions, you have to beat 2 new extra ops, the side ops in this game. Most of the side ops that you have been able to play to this point are pretty easy. Some of them I think are pretty fun, like the balloon popping ones. Though this is when they start to become incredibly difficult, and you're fighting custom versions of vehicle bosses. Your custom is a special denominator for boss variants. It is the most difficult version of any given boss. You fight custom versions of pretty much every vehicle boss you fought, and then the AI weapons. And there were easier side missions that revolve around more core gameplay loops, like sneaking or hold-ups or things like that. But you are eventually going to have to beat some of these if you want to get to the ending, which is, to this point, Paz has been getting into hijinks and hanging out with everyone at Mother Base, which includes stupid-ass Huey and Strangelove.
Kaz has been playing guitar a lot.
Kaz even wrote a song with Paz called Love Deterrence. Strangelove tries to sexually harass Paz. She tries to...
Isn't it like she's sunbathing, right?
Yeah. She tries to rub sunblocker on her tits. And then later when Paz gets a cold, she tries to, she says there's a, Mayan cure that involves her rubbing something on her chest. All these characters think she's 16, by the way. She's not.
This is the reveal at this point, right? That the whole time she has been because that's what they said at the very beginning of the game. She's like, I am 16 years old and I want the peace.
Yeah.
And she, is wearing like a little Red Riding Hood jacket, and everyone believes this innocent act that she's putting on, because really she's she's 20, in her early 20s.
So after the 7th Zadornov capture mission, he escapes the final time, and Snake is like, oh, fuck it. And there's no new Zadornov mission pops up for you, even if you beat these incredibly grindy extra op missions, unless you go to the first side op, which is called, something like target practice with no time limit. And you go to the upper level, and then a cutscene starts where Zadornov pops out and goes, my plan worked or something. And he pulls a gun on Snake, and Snake just shoots him dead.
Yep. Well, he fires his arm
hand at you. Yeah.
And it doesn't work at all.
It goes like 2 feet.
And they'll have to tinker with that in Phantom Pain 10 years later. And then Snake shoots him dead. What he was, the reason he kept running away, like Cesar Romero in the original Batman show, just over and over and over again, you have to bring him back to jail, is because he has been distracting you while Paz tweaks Metal Gear Zeke, which you have presumably built at this point in the game. It's your actual Metal Gear. It's a bipedal weapon armed with the nuke from Peace Walker, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Paz is now on the, helipad of Mother Base, and she has revealed she's undressed, obviously, because I guess Zeke is like flooding or something in the cockpit. There's some reason why they explain she's undressed. I can't recall it right now. And she's saying, you idiots, I am not a peace-loving 16-year-old Costa Rican girl. My name is not Paz. It's Pacifica Ocean. And I work for Cypher. I work for Major Zero. And I've commandeered your Metal Gear. I'm now telling you, join Zero, whose organization at the moment is called Cypher. Join us or die. Be a servant of Zero and enforce the New World Order, essentially. And you have to fight Metal Gear Zeke with Paz piloting it.
Part of Zero's plan, as Paz explains it, is while Zero is building up resources and blackmail and followers for his one world government, Big Boss will act as kind of like an NWO version of Che Guevara.
Right.
He will be a symbol that they can rally behind, and he can even use MSF as his private strike force to help further his goals. If he says no, you're buddy, you're going to hell. And Big Boss says, I'm going to hell anyway. I already recruited a little kid.
Yeah.
Thus begins the final boss fight of the game. So I think the Zeke fight is much more fun than the Peace Walker fight. I did all the very grindy stuff at the end of the game, so I ended up having like armor and the railgun and all the shit for Zeke. But I like this fight a lot. Zeke is very mobile, but he doesn't like, it's not as much of a struggle with the camera or with its physicality as the final Peace Walker fight is at sometimes, and it doesn't have as many annoying features like Peace Walker's flamethrower. I like that you could just go to a console on the MSF base and call in a supply drop. I like this fight a lot, even though I think it's really fucking weird how Paz is in her underwear while piloting it. But whatever. Yeah.
I think they throw something in there. Like, for some reason, there's water in it, so she took off her clothes. Whatever. Yeah. But she also has said, if you reject Zero's offer, I'm going to fire a nuke at the U.S. East Coast and then you'll be held responsible and you'll be known as an international criminal. Now, here's the problem that we've mentioned in the past that they never quite get around to. Because I'm fine with this. Basically, this is like the next two games, but they kind of overplayed their hand here with the whole like framing him as international criminal, because they never address how the fuck Big Boss got back into the good graces of the U.S. Army to be the commander of Foxhound in the first MSX game, which Phantom Pain is a direct prequel to. Maybe it would have been better if they said like a shadowy figure, so it's like there's more ambiguity. But at one point, Big Boss he has a scheme to betray them, but he will be hired by the U.S. government again. So that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But, whatever. There's no way that you're ever going to patch all these different little threads together. But you beat Paz. You fucking launch her ass into the ocean along with Zeke. And I think we'll pick up with her later, but do we presume she's dead in this game?
She's I don't think it's directly stated, but everyone does seem to assume that she died.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you get the real bombshell, or at least another bombshell from Kaz.
I think this is pretty important to the events of Phantom Pain.
Mm-hmm.
Kaz reveals that he knew all along that Zadornov, to some extent, and definitely Paz, were agents of Cypher. He has been in business with Cypher as a way to build MSF because he sees it as a business of the future. His rationale is the Cold War is going to last forever, and sooner or later, the world is going to need private military contractors, and this is the only way to start what he calls a new type of business. But he feels guilty about sort of pulling the wool over Big Boss's eyes and making it seem as though he was fooled by Paz's whole act. We don't get that. They aren't super explicit with this. I always interpret the Big Boss's behavior after this towards him as like a little bit cold, though not outright casting him out. But I think it sets up some pretty important things later on down the line. I do kind of think that this does kind of devastate Big Boss much more than he shows, or if not devastate him. From that moment, that is sort of the beginning of the end for him and Kaz's relationship.
He never fully trusts him again.
No, yeah. And I think that's really good setup for Phantom Pain especially. And it's pretty fucking tragic because Kaz is probably the best friend he's ever had. But another thing that I like about it too, though, is it is like a shithead move on Kaz's part. Like you can see his reasoning, and he does explain himself, but it is like pretty fucking rotten to do.
It's a very ambiguous ending as to what the direction is for their relationship. But then after the credits roll, you do see some foreshadowing. Like one of the it does what it often does, at least in Snake Eater, where you get a little timeline scroll, and you see how it turned out for the Sandinistas, who I'm sure stopped getting KGB support at that point. And thank God for that. Who would want all that money and all this money in arms? But you do see one of the timeline bullets is the Soviets invade Afghanistan, and then at the very end of the credits, you get the classic final audio blip, and it is Big Boss announcing the new private mercenary force known as Outer Heaven.
We will forsake our countries. We will leave our motherlands behind us and become one with this earth. We have no nation, no philosophy, no ideology. We go where we're needed, fighting not for country, not for government, but for ourselves. We need no reason to fight. We fight because we are needed. We will be the deterrent for those with no other recourse. We are soldiers without borders, our purpose defined by the era we live in. We will sometimes have to sell ourselves and services. If the times demand it, we'll be revolutionaries, criminals, terrorists, and yes, we may all be headed straight to hell. But what better place for us than this? It is our only home, our heaven and our hell. This is outer heaven.
I don't know if I should fully go into Kaz's character before we do that episode. Ultimately, I think he's one of the best and most interesting characters they've ever done.
Yeah.
I mean,
Much credit to Robert Atkin Downes, by the way. We haven't shouted him out yet, but he's really, really a great vocal performer. For
a
Kaz.
fucking amazing job, because this version of Kaz is he's so fun. He's like this sort of hedonistic ladies man, but he's a great friend to Big Boss.
Yep.
And then the way that he plays him in Phantom Pain, where again, it's horrible and he's just consumed by anger and revenge and I think self-loathing.
Yeah.
I think a huge part of that character is him accusing people of things that he himself is guilty of very directly. Mm-hmm. But he just retains so much of that original character that we meet in this game. Just the incredible performance by him, and I think a great performance by David Hayter. I think the Outer Heaven speech that he does at the very end. I think the case can be made that he would have done a very good job in Ground Zeroes and for one small scene in the Phantom Pain. Though I do think overall they probably made the right move.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it literally is. I mean, we'll get to it, but just a few other notes. Mm-hmm. We alluded to the audio cassettes earlier on. Some of the funniest writing in this game is in the audio tapes.
Yep.
One that I wanted to pick out in particular was the conversations between Snake and Strangelove. Most of these are not funny. They're just more background on Strangelove and the boss's relationship. They met during the Mercury program when the boss initially went to space.
Right.
And you get it. That's where the thing about the boss's horse comes from also. But there is a really funny conversation they have about the movie Doctor Strangelove, where Strangelove is trying to explain it to Snake and explain her nickname. And she goes, "Okay, do you know that movie Doctor Strangelove, or how I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb?" And he goes, "You were in a movie?" I just thought that, and he sounds so excited that someone he knows would have been in a movie. I really loved pretty much all the tapes I listened to. Also, Paz's diary is very interesting. Mm-hmm. There's a thematic setup with this entire game. If you haven't noticed, it's very lighthearted. Yeah, there's a lot of goofy, silly stuff.
Aside from the people preying on who they think is a 16-year-old by lotioning them up on the private military contractor's secret base. It is more lighthearted. It's just funny that there's still weird elements like that.
Yeah. Oh, there's an incredibly weird date with Paz extra mission that you have to really grind to unlock. I was not trying to unlock that. Also, a great date with Kaz.
Yep.
Side mission. Where I mean neither of these are canonical. So you didn't really have sex in a cardboard box with either of them.
Good.
But Paz's character is sort of, I think some of it is hastily explained, and I think some of it could have been done better. And in general, just all the pacing of Chapter 5 is kind of it's a very weird way to end a game, as we said, very reminiscent of Phantom Pen.
Yep.
But I really liked some of the Paz's diary tapes that we get through grinding a lot of those side missions at the end, because the entire thematic setup of this being like the last time when things were even like kind of good,
Right.
because it really goes to hell after this, and
Yep.
the games end up going into these incredibly fucking dark places that to this day remain incredibly controversial with a lot of fans of this series.
And it's funny that this is like a direct prequel with its lighthearted tone, and there's like more kids in it. Right? And
Yeah.
Paz is disguising herself as a kid, but Chico's a real, like, actual, child soldier. But the very next game directly places those like younger characters in the most depraved situation anyone has yet experienced in this series. It's quite the whiplash.
Yeah, the most like graphic, upsetting.
Yeah.
Ground Zeroes is one of my favorite games ever, and I'm so
Me too.
excited to talk about it. But I think this game, for all the faults it had, either owing to the platform it was made for, or just pacing issues and grind issues with the final fifth of the game, I still think it did such an incredible job both setting up the characters, but also just the tonal whiplash that would come later on, that it ended up just really impressing me. We talked earlier about, in our episode on 3, about how 3 is sort of it's a vindication of this idea that you don't need to write a whole like fucking lore Bible where you explain every single event that has ever happened in whatever thing you're making. And sometimes it's better to make things up as you go along, or to just have a vague idea. But playing this trilogy, it really showed that there is a middle ground between going in the Star Wars direction, where you have to watch 10 different fucking streaming shows to figure out what's going on, and just flying by the seat of your pants to the point that until Metal Gear Solid 3, the boss was originally part of a character named China Man. So
Slash Otto Skorzeny.
Yeah. Otto Skorzeny. Fuck, what was the name of the Otto Skorzeny character? It was something really stupid, like old boy.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
And he also had a living tattoo.
That's neat.
But yeah, an incredible step forward for their pacing, and especially their character writing and dialogue.
I'm going to have to see how it feels with the writing in Phantom Pain. But I do think that a big reason why it works to expand the story and to, even answer certain questions at this point is that the character relationships are satisfying. It's not just like in 4, here's a monologue for 45 minutes, and now we're going to do a bunch of shit that makes you really annoyed. The dynamics and the relationships of the characters make you want to learn more, rather than simply just be spoon-fed a bunch of fan service for no particular reason that just comes out of nowhere, or comes from God or a Deus Ex Machina, or a rather tiresome plot that grinds on and on, like Metal Gear Solid 4. Because you really do care about, Big Boss and Kaz. And then when Ocelot shows up, how Ocelot's going to factor into their relationship. There's a little bit of a triangle now. And does Kaz trust Ocelot? And so forth. So that's a lot better than what we had in the last game.
Yeah, that was a huge issue I had with the last game too. Is that this was, at least, according to the game itself directly, that all these events kind of happened because of these people's personal relationships, and yet we never have any scenes that just sort of naturally display the value these characters have to each other through their relationships.
Yep.
We never get to actually see, what does Big Boss think about Ocelot doing all this stuff for him? How did Ava feel about him towards the end? We got monologues, and some of those monologues are pretty good. I think the Big Boss one at the end is one of the better ones. But they just don't feel like fully fleshed out characters because no one is actually really interacting with each other, save for, Snake and Otacon. This game goes so far in the opposite direction. And Phantom Pain, when we get to it, I think it's one of the great tragedies. It was so close to like being the greatest thing ever made. And who knows? We weren't there when it was being made. I tend to think that if they had taken another year or so, they could have really put a nice bow on things. But one thing that you cannot say about that game is that they resort to that sort of endless monologuing. Characters actually have interpersonal and social struggles with each other in this way that was unthinkable in 4. And I really kind of admire it because, I touched on it in the intro. I don't think a lot of people could survive how disheartening the experience of making and then seeing the reception for Metal Gear Solid 4, what that must have been like. But also to grow so much in your output after that is really impressive.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, do you think we'll be able to do Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain in one episode?
Maybe should we break it up? I don't know, because Ground Zeroes is kind of too short to do. I don't know.
Well, enough housekeeping. Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, definitely worth seeking out if you've become a real fan. I could see it flying under the radar for a lot of people. Like I said at the top, it's pretty impressive given that it could have been, I feel bad saying this, another Portable Ops, but by the way, just one thing about Portable Ops I haven't said yet. Portable Ops has my favorite song written for the game. I'll give it that. The song Calling to the Night, which is available on your Walkman in this game and on your iPod in Metal Gear Solid 4. It's just got a very 1997 smoky end of credits quality to it that I've always really enjoyed and that I do put on the Walkman whenever I play this or 4. So I can say that much for Portable Ops. I really don't have much else to say about it. But shout out for that song. This is far superior to that and sets up what we, I think, agree is a really intriguing next few games.
Yeah, I would say this game really can be a huge time investment. So, look, if you have been playing these games along with us and you have found yourself really falling in love with them, and you're probably sort of raring to go to play Phantom Pain because it is such a new standard for not just gameplay in the series, but I would say stealth gameplay in general. Then I would absolutely recommend playing it either on a actual PS3 or an emulation. But if you're kind of on and off, you like some of these games, some of them you don't enjoy playing as much, maybe watch a playthrough on YouTube because it really can be a time sink. Yeah, if you really want to do everything. Oh, yeah. By the way, Strangelove, for some reason, warms to Huey at the end, even though he's just behaved repulsively this entire... I never got that.
Yes.
I mean, I guess
they've been through a lot.
Yeah, kind of. I get someone has to fuck Huey so Hal can exist. I get it. But
he is also conventionally attractive.
Yeah, he is kind of good looking.
She has this weird thing where she's like, come walk with me, and it's playing off of the fact that he can't walk, and I don't know what that is. That's a neg, maybe.
And she calls him. His name isn't actually Huey. Huey is his nickname, and she named him after a crippled service robot. Some bullshit 60s sci-fi thing.
We'll get more information on that next time in the Days of Our Lives style cassettes about the Emmerich family.
Let's just say she found the relationship suffocating.
There you go. Okay, that's good.
Okay.
through the night to the day when everything is gone. Carry this soul.